If Barcelona keep playing like this, I'm gonna say it, guys. I think we're gonna end the season trophyless. I've been reading the comments, and a lot of you agree with me. And it all comes down to four things that I think Hansi Flick still hasn't solved. And in today's video, I'll explain exactly what they are and why they matter more than you think. What's going on, guys? ¿Cómo están? BugaLuis here, and welcome back to another video here on the channel. And yes, as we all probably already know, Barcelona suffered a defeat at the hands of Real Madrid in the last El Clásico. I already commented on everything that happened in the game. You can watch that video on screen right now if you missed it, because today's video is going to be focused much more on the aftermath, on those four things I believe Hansi Flick needs to improve to make this team better and make sure that we end up with some silverware at the end of the season. And those four things in a nutshell are basically that Hansi Flick needs to improve the pressure and the defense. He needs to start picking a right center back duo and a proper right back starter. Is he gonna go with Koundé? Is he gonna go with Eric Garcia? Then he has to also pick who's going to be their number 10, you know? Are we going to be reverting to an extra CDM? Because we've seen that Cazador has been playing in some games. I believe that could be a possibility, you know, playing with an extra holding midfielder. That could be for some extra protection. Also, I believe that Hansi Flick needs to change it up a bit, you know, do not be so tactically rigid. He has been a little bit more flexible with Araujo playing as a number 9 in some instances like we did against Girona. And last but not least, I think that he needs to put his arm around Lamine Yamal and tell him, Lamine, focus on football. Just focus on the freaking football and shut your mouth. So if that is all that you wanted to know, well, feel free to shut the video down because I want to be respectful of your time. However, if you still want to stick with us, you can leave your opinion on what you think Hansi Flick needs to improve in the comment box down below. And be sure to drop a like and subscribe and hit the bell notification icon, as each of those things help me out in a huge, huge way. Now, let's get started on point number 1 of what Flick needs to improve in this team, and that is the defense. So like I mentioned at the start of the video, we need to improve the pressing and the defense of this side, which is not an easy feat. Hansi Flick, there's always this comment around him that he never does it good in the second season with a team. It always seems that he struggles a little bit. And that could be mainly due to several different things. The first one is definitely that his style of play demands a lot of concentration, both mentally and physically, and that consistency is something which at the end of the day sort of ends up costing quite a lot, and players find it very difficult to replicate a second year running, and that is something that we're seeing it right now with Barcelona. So that's where I think that with the departure of someone like Íñigo Martínez, who already knew the system in and out, Hansi Flick is really struggling to find someone that can take his spot and replace that player in the commanding presence. As some of you have said in the comments, I've read them, we need to move on from Íñigo Martínez, and I do understand that, but I just can't stress this enough, how important he was to our team. We do not have a proper leader in the back line now, and Araujo was supposed to be that, but Hansi Flick still, I think, doesn't trust him as much as he should have, maybe, or he sees something in the Charrua, in the Uruguayan, that doesn't really convince him. And that is why we are relying quite a lot on Cubarsí. And people forget that Cubarsí is not as talented as someone like Lamine Yamal, but he's going under the same sort of pressures and going under the same sort of evolution and rapid development as someone like as Lamine Yamal. And we just forget about Cubarsí. I think Cubarsí this season is struggling a bit with all of that sort of leadership that he needs to command when it comes down to the center back partnerships, because he's been constantly being shifted in and out with either Eric Garcia, Christensen, Ronald Araujo. He never has a proper partner, and he's not like a Virgil van Dijk that has, you know, a lot of years in the backpack where he can just go and say, hey, I know how to adapt myself. He's still learning his trade and going as developing, and I think that is something where Barcelona are struggling a bit. And I think that Hansi Flick needs to settle down on 2 proper center backs. And that's where I think that certainly I would go with Cubarsí, and I think I honestly don't have an answer, to be honest. I think For me personally, I really like Ronald Araujo, but I see Eric Garcia equally as talented and maybe has even more arguments to say he should be a starter under the team that Hansi Flick is looking. But Ronald Araujo, I just think he has the physicality that we are lacking in that middle area within our own box. And I would just prefer that when it comes down to football nowadays. Football is such a physical team, physical sport that we need someone like that in our team. So I would go with Cubarsí and Araujo. And if that were to happen, then the debate also comes down to the right back position. What's happening there? Because Koundé, his form has dipped massively. And Hansi Flick also has to take a decision there whether to keep Koundé or go with Eric Garcia, who at the start of the season and at the end of the last campaign was also putting in good performances. So let's see where Hansi Flick decides. I think he needs to take the decision. And that's the main thing. You know, I'm not here to tell you what Hansi Flick needs to pick, but I'm sort of saying, hey, this is what we should be looking into the next few games, and this is what I'm suggesting that they need to sort of, you know, get their shit together. The second thing, of course, are the injuries. But the injuries, that's something that Hansi Flick cannot really control. That's out of his hands, out of his realm of responsibility, to be honest. And therefore, what we can take a look at is how does he adapt with that? Because right now we have Fermín López, who is at an incredible form, and you know he's taking up that number 10 position. Daniel Olmo is not really working out so far. He's still injured as well. And we don't have Gavi. Rafinha is not in the team. We know all of that, right? But with our previous point where we mentioned the defense, could maybe bringing in a CDM, you know, help that? Because we do have CDMs fit. We do have Marc Bernal and we do have Marc Casado. I think Hansi Flick is trying to ease Marc Bernal back into the rhythm of things, and that makes perfect sense. But let's remember that last season, Marc Casado was out of this world, and we played many times with a midfield of Pedri and Casado, and they looked really, really good together. I think that Hansi Flick could try to put Marc Casado back in the team as we've been seeing the last few games, and I think that could really help Barcelona play good football again. I think the best Barcelona that we saw last season on the Hansi Flick was during this time as well, when we beat Bayern Munich, when we beat Real Madrid in the first El Clásico, and Casado was part of that team. So maybe he's not, I'm not going to say, maybe he's not the missing link, but he certainly could be someone that could add fresh legs into our side and can also help that engine room where we're definitely lacking. So it's of course going to be very harsh on someone like a number 10 like Fermín López because he's having a tremendous season, but then maybe you remove the striker, put Fermín López there because we don't have a striker at the moment who's fit. Ferran Torres still looked out of rhythm, out of sync. I'm not saying I'm just suggesting and throwing things in the air at the moment because Hansi Flick has to be the one to take the decision. I'm just saying that Casado, for me, was such a pivotal part of last season, and I think that he could get a little bit more of a recognition this time around. And I think that we do need extra legs in the midfield, and I just wanted to suggest that out there because I think that he could add something more to our team. My next point is that Hansi Flick needs to be a little more flexible, and he needs to start being that ASAP because you see even the biggest managers out there, they change things up. Pep Guardiola has changed things up drastically with Manchester City. Xabi Alonso, that was incredible at Bayer Leverkusen. I mean, he almost went the entire season without losing, right? But only lost to Atalanta in the Europa League. He has arrived at Real Madrid and even got into that dressing room and said, hey, I cannot replicate what I've been doing at Leverkusen that got me to that point. What made me a really good manager, I cannot do that at Real Madrid. That's happening to Xabi Alonso, and even still, he adapted. I'm not saying, hey, Xabi Alonso is better than Hansi Flick and whatnot. I'm saying, Hansi Flick, you have an incredible way of playing football, and I love it. We have garnered so much improvements over the last few years or so under you, and your Papa Flick. But there are some instances where you need to be able to change things up, and I think that we are seeing slight improvements of that. For instance, Araujo as a number 9. That is something that we never saw last season. You know, some instances where Hansi Flick just said, you know what, just throw everything up there, just try to score and win. I think that Hansi Flick is realizing that a little bit more when, I'm not saying growing older, but as you get more experience, you realize that sometimes you need to really change things up. And that is something that happened in Germany and happened in Bayern Munich. His second season, he just couldn't keep things up. He just couldn't keep things up to the same way that he started playing because team either figured him out or the players just couldn't keep up with the demands that the manager put on their team, on the squad. And I think that that is where this time around we need to, be flexible. We need to be tactically flexible. And Hansi Flick needs to start doing that. We're seeing, let's say, 15% of that. I think Hansi Flick needs to move that up to a 30, 45% in some instances. I'm not saying always do that. And I like what we saw in a Clásico, for instance. He moved Lamine Yamal as a number 10. We never seen that before. That is a incredible point. Lamine Yamal played as a number 10 for Barcelona. I don't think Flick had ever done that before. And that shows a little bit of flexibility. So more of that, manager, more of that, because the answers lie in you trying different things. So let's keep at it. And last but not least, like I mentioned, the player Lamine Yamal. I think that Lamine Yamal, I didn't know if I wanted to make a different video about it, but I think that Lamine Yamal needs to focus on football a little bit more. This Lamine Yamal is different from the one that it was last season. This Lamine Yamal is consolidated. He's a world-class player. People know he's probably the second or first best player in the world right now, determined on form, depending on how you look at football. You could say him, Mbappe, whatever. That's not the point of this video. What I'm trying to say is that he's a different Lamine Yamal. He has a different way of approaching football. And that way, right now, I do not know if it's the most fruitful for Barcelona in this environment. He can do whatever he wants, and I'm okay with it. Like, hell, I already said this. If I was Lamine Yamal and it was in his boots, I was in his shoes, in his position, I would probably brag even more. My God, I would have like 3 Ferraris by now. I'm not joking. The thing is that you just need to, I'm saying, I just think that he needs to focus on football a little bit more. I'm not sure whether how much that's being affected, but what I'm trying to say is that Hans Flick, I just think, needs to, the same way that he did to Rafinha, like he made Rafinha such an important part of the team. I think Yamal is already an important part of the team in the dressing room and whatnot, but I think that Flick has to find a way to manage him, to bring him down to a level or a tactical level where we can put those things behind him. It's difficult. It's difficult to talk about it. I'm not gonna lie. It's a difficult topic. It's a difficult topic to talk about it, but I just think that he needs to focus on football a little bit more. And that is something that the manager also has to do. That's what a manager does. Manages people, manages the dressing room, manages the players. And that's what I think Hansi Flick has to do. So yeah, I wanted to leave it there because I think that we do need some sort of improvement in that model, in that area. I think we need Lamine Yamal to come back down to earth a little bit. I'm not saying he's, bragging, crecido, it's in Spanish, but I just think that we need to play football, focus back on it, because I think that this season we're talking way more about the things that happen off the pitch than happen in the pitch. And we just need to play football, guys. Sometimes the sport is way more simple. It's just a sport. It's 11 men and just need to put the ball in the back of the net. We just need to focus back onto the simple things again, and I think that Hansi Flick can do that. So guys, if you want to add anything into this list, be sure to let me know in the comment box down below. I'm definitely going to be here to read your comments. It's impossible to respond to all of them, but I always try to respond like at least to 10. So yeah, be sure to get the comments as soon as possible so I can read them. So yeah, see you in the next one. Take care. Hope you have enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, do all those things, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Ciao, ciao.